But all those things taken as a whole, does that really affect the decision making of the court? And something your opponent says about these kinds of issues is look at the decisions. If we were all on the same philosophy, we'd have all 7-0 decisions. And she says that's not what happens.
And that's simply not the case. But let me give you just one example. When the court makes decisions that are in election matters, or makes decisions that are in highly political matters, and the court is 7-0 all one party and lopsided in that way, it allows for people to criticize the decision, even if the court gets it right. Even if the decision is proper. It doesn't affect how I make decisions. I make decisions by following the law. I make decisions by deferring to the legislature on matters of policy, by deferring to the executive branch on matters of policy, and by following the law as it's written and as it's given to me and applying it to the facts. But it does affect public confidence and trust in our system.
What do you think should be done with campaign contributions, spending, campaign finance related to judicial races?
That's a challenging question. And it's a question that has become even more challenging since the United States Supreme Court issued its decision in Citizens United, overturning decades of prior precedent and allowing for greater participation by corporations and others that have substantial amounts of money. I think that it is important that we look at the system. Importantly, that we do a good job of disclosure about contributions. For example, we've not done a very good job of disclosure on individual, we have individual contribution limits, but I know that there are times where a number of individuals who are all allied can make contributions, and those aren't counted in that fashion. They're not aggregated in any fashion. So disclosure to the public is certainly very, very important, and I think we can do a better job of that. The law is pretty clear as it's developed both in the United States Supreme Court and in other courts, that there are First Amendment rights that voters have to be able to participate and to be able to contribute. So we can't do something that gets in the way of those rights. The Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals has recently announced a decision pertaining to Kentucky that said if states are going to have elections, as Ohio does, then we need to abide by the rules pertaining to elections, and the First Amendment applies. So we need to operate within that system, but I think disclosure can be helpful.
What about public funding of races? Where do you stand on that?
I think that public funding is certainly a matter that might be very, very helpful and deserving of careful consideration and careful thought. If public funding were provided in a way that provided a level playing field for the candidates, provided adequate funding to both candidates to be able to get their messages out to the public, that's certainly worth considering. I don't see any way in the foreseeable future that that's going to happen. Given the realities that we face, I don't think voters are ready to support doing that, and I don't think that our current budget financially will allow for that in the near future.
When you put on the road, do you still consider yourself a Democrat, or does it matter at that point?
As I mentioned, in deciding cases, I decide cases based on the law. Part of my responsibility is what's called judicial review, and that is to measure legislation or executive action against the Constitution. And if it falls outside the bounds of the Constitution, it's my responsibility to say that it's void. If it falls within the bounds of the Constitution, it's my responsibility and obligation to follow the law, without regard to whether I like the policy decisions that were made or not. Mm-hmm. And I can set those things aside. I think what's important is that we do have, as I mentioned, a mix of ideas, a mix of people. It allows me to challenge the views of my colleagues on the court and for them to challenge my views. And the result of that is we all get sharper. We consider more ideas. We consider more consequences. And I think that's a good thing for the process. Nobody that I talk to thinks that it's important or helpful to have a lopsided court or to have 7-0 decisions all the time. It's healthy for the process that we have a diversity of views and perspectives.
What's been the biggest challenge since you took office?
Well, the number one biggest challenge was one that I was already facing when I decided to run for office. It's a challenge simply in following 24 years of very good leadership by Chief Justice Tom Moyer, stepping into that shadow and following him. I knew that that would be difficult, and I had anticipated originally doing that in January after an election and after he had been able to retire. The circumstances of his passing in April and of stepping into the leadership role as Chief Justice more quickly presented even greater challenges. I've had success with transitions in the past. I learned how to do a transition successfully from my friend Attorney General Betty Montgomery. When she came into the Attorney General's office following 25 years of Democrats, she asked me to stay on her team, and she showed me how to do a transition smoothly and by not asking people to leave, by taking a look at the staff that was there and working with them, and she did that. I used those lessons when I went to the Franklin County Probate Court and followed 45 years of Republicans and an 18-year incumbent. And I didn't ask a single person to leave. I told the staff of 50 that I would get to know them and their work before making any decisions. And they proved to be a very highly qualified, capable staff that do very good work. So stepping into the office of Chief Justice and leading the Supreme Court, I followed those lessons. In fact, I reached out and hired back to be on my personal staff the people that had served on Tom Moyer's personal staff. And that has helped me build relationships within the court and maintain relationships within the court. That has helped me in providing continuity to have well-experienced people on my staff. The other thing that I did is that I went and visited every employee in the court, all 260, department by department, office by office, sat down with them to introduce myself, to talk about Tom Moyer, to talk about my plans, and importantly, to hear from them. And I think that doing that helped and went a long way. Because, as I said, it was important both to provide leadership and continuity, but also to provide compassion. And I know I've done that successfully.
Okay. Anything else you want to add?
I do look forward to support of your viewers and readers as we wind down to Election Day in now less than 2 weeks.
Have you voted?
I have. Both my wife, Marilyn, who's a Franklin County Commissioner running for re-election, and I went in and voted a few weeks ago. Early voting makes that very, very easy.
Yeah.